Going to give everybody a few moments to get on. Hope everyone had a nice lunch. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our next speaker. I'm happy to present my friend Greg Pest. He's a technical consultant at Copert Biological Systems, which is helping farmers across the United States develop programs that increase their output of their operations. Greg has more than a decade of experience in horticulture and agriculture, and today is going to talk with all of you about some of the best practices in integrated pest management, or IPM, that are going on in hemp farming today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg in 1 second. Just to let you guys know, we'll be doing a live Q&A at the end of the session. If you check the bottom of your screen, you'll see a link to provide questions. Just go ahead and type them in, and at the end of the session, we'll go ahead and get all those answered for you. This session will be available via recording to all the attendees afterwards, so don't worry, you'll have all the information available. And with that, I turn it over to Greg.
Hi, thank you, Kim. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk here at the Expo, and welcome back from the break. We're going to jump into a conversation about IPM and biological control for hemp, which is still a conversation that we're learning more about all the time, as this is a fairly new conversation, a new outdoor crop, growing and growing. So to start off, you can see here we're going to jump into the best practices and what that means for biological control and IPM programs. More or less, I want to start off by saying, with so many different climates and grow conditions that our participants have, plus the different pests and diseases that are out there, this presentation is going to be more generic, more of an overview of basic or starter conversations. So that said, I do want to emphasize that as a Copert consultant, our expertise is designing hand-tailored programs so that you can achieve success. So detailed questions and things like that are definitely welcome in this conversation, but more or less probably would need to take it offline to really deep dive into how this works. So to start off, who is Copert? Basically, we recently celebrated 50 years of being a company of R&D, as well as biocontrol and pollination products. If you can see my cursor, this is actually a photograph of our headquarters, our corporate headquarters, excuse me, in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. We are a global company with subsidiaries in 26 countries. So excited to hear that there are multiple countries represented in this phone call today, or this conference. We supply over 90 countries around the world, so the likelihood is that we can find solutions and get them to you. Here in the United States, we recently took the title of being the largest subsidiary of Copert, with 20 or more consultants like myself, again, helping you guys develop and maintain programs nationwide. And finally, we are the largest beneficial insect rearing company in the world. This is what we're going to try to cover today. We should have enough time. What is biological control and IPM? Kind of a quick overview of our products, the importance of monitoring and scouting. What exactly is chemical integration and what does that mean for us? Application strategies could be very important for some of you with large scale grows. Additional resources, always worth mentioning. And of course, to follow up, we'll do a quick overview of the keys to success. I kind of wanted to start with this boring slide, but yet very important. These basically capture some of the major questions that get asked, and these words get thrown around quite a bit. I've already done it. What is biological control and what is IPM? There's a lot of different definitions and a lot of different people that have different opinions of what these are. So I kind of just wanted to capture what I thought were important, especially working with our line of products. More or less, these two quotes for biological control I thought were really spot on. The use of living organisms to suppress the population of a specific pest organism, making it less abundant or less damaging than it otherwise would be. Or the second, the use of natural enemies to maintain pest populations within acceptable limits. I know that's probably going to be a good question there. What is acceptable limits? And that's something that we work with the growers with specifically to determine that. Usually budget is a big part of that question, and what kind of damage. So as a quick, I guess, summary of that, what is biological control? It's a lot different than your typical traditional conventional farming. We're talking about using beneficial insects in the best way possible with the chemicals that are available. And that kind of brings us to IPM, which is the integration of both biological agents and chemicals to emphasize the growth of a healthy crop while minimizing the risk to human health and the environment. In other words, like safer pest control. And more or less, I mean, that basically means the more healthy your plant, the more healthy the environment around your plant, the better you're going to get results out of what you want your crop to be. So for hemp, whatever you're growing it for, we can basically improve those results. And that kind of moves us into our products themselves, also known as biological agents. They kind of break down for us into three categories. The first being predators. And I know this is a busy slide, so I apologize. Essentially what we've got is a listing of common pests. And I know probably people that are dialing in here have a number of different pests that aren't going to be spoken about today, but this is more or less common pests specifically for cannabis. A lot of that same conversation is going to basically relate to what you're growing outdoor, or even if you're doing indoor starts for hemp, or even indoor grows for hemp. So for instance, if we're dealing with a common pest like whitefly, our basic predator for that is called a Swirsky mite. Now, where I'm pointing my cursor, these are Copert product names. And I thought it really important to talk about the Ultimite sachet. For those of you who may not be familiar, sachets are a pretty popular application method for using beneficial insects. And this specific sachet, known as the Ultimite, was designed actually for outdoor use. So it could be really interesting for you as a possible solution to a whitefly issue, or as you can see, also a thrips issue. I like these photographs, by the way, of Swirsky. These are these predatory mites, and it kind of captures what they work on the most. And in this case, they are predating on thrip larvae, whitefly larvae, and also the eggs, which basically helps us kind of cater these programs to target specific growth cycles. Moving on through some of the other pests that you're probably used to seeing, spider mite. I think this really gives me a good opportunity to get into a conversation known as what is the difference between a specialist and a generalist predator. And definitely the most popular solution for spider mite is what we call Spidex or Persimilis. Definitely this particular predator is a specialist. And what that means is that it really only targets two-spotted mite to survive. So this is really, really an effective predator for spider mite. And then moving next door, what we call spike owl, known as Californicus, also a predatory mite that does quite well against spider mite. And each of these have specific niches or scenarios where we would recommend their use. And before I move away from predatory mites, I definitely want to point out to take note of their shape. They are tear-shaped. So for those of you that are beginning out doing scouting and seeing these little spiders, there's definitely a difference in the shape of what we call good guys compared to bad guys. So look for that teardrop shape to be a good indicator of who a good guy is. Oh, excuse me. Other predatory conversations, definitely we have. This right here is known as a pirate bug or aureus. Our product name is Thripor, very effective against thrips, as well as these two products, which could be very important for hemp. But we've got the gall midge. It's called Ephitalides. This is a cute little maggot. I know that's a strange combination of words. But the Ephitalides gall midge will lay its eggs next to aphid populations, and these maggots will hatch and feed on the aphids, as well as one of my favorites, the green lacewing larva we call Chrysopa. Looks like a little alligator. It has mandibles that will devour these aphids in great numbers. So keep a lookout for these guys while you're scouting. They could be an important indicator of how we can help you out. Second category is what we refer to as parasitoids. And let me be a little more specific, parasites. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But parasitoids are essentially little parasitic wasps. And we have different combinations of them that deal specifically with whitefly and aphid, as well as some other pests out there, but these are the most common conversation pieces. For whitefly, I basically wanted to have one photograph here that kind of captures the two parasitic wasps that will predate on whitefly larvae. What they do is they will sting the larva, and ultimately their baby will hatch outside of that dead larva. A lot like the movie Alien, if you're familiar with it. Kind of gross, but fascinating at the same time. The two wasps that we primarily work with are, Encarsia formosa, as well as Eretmoceras eremiscus. And this same kind of conversation piece exists with aphids, predating aphids with these parasitoids, little microscopic wasps. So nothing like the murder wasp, if you've seen that in the news as of late. These are tiny little wasps, and they do basically the same thing, except they will sting juvenile and adult aphids with the same effect, basically impregnating that aphid, and their baby will hatch out of it. I was going to show you a video, but I understand that's probably not technically available. I will come back to videos later during this discussion so that if you are interested in looking at them, you'll have that opportunity. And finally, with the parasite conversation, I did not include it in this slide just because I didn't have time, I guess, or space maybe would be a better excuse, are nematodes. Nematodes are a fantastic opportunity for you to be in a program that is friendly with beneficial insects. These are specifically little parasitic worms, parasites, that will get inside of the larva of your pest and basically multiply inside that pest and kill it. Very easy to use, and they are something that you can tank mix with a number of different chemicals as well as other bio solutions. So keep that in mind. Moving on, this is the last category. We like to refer to it as pathogens. Copert has a few really good products for you to consider that are considered pathogens. These are ultimately beneficial fungus. The first of them called Trianum, and I wanted to highlight the powder, Trianum P, which is obviously a wettable powder. It's essentially the Trichoderma T22 strain. And its real wheelhouse is to protect your root ball from soil-borne diseases. You can see the four here that I've basically highlighted. The one I'm probably most, or actually the two are the first two, the Fusarium and the Pythium, although it also works on the others really quite well. There are a number of different things this also will do for you. One of the things that I really like to talk about with Trianum is root stimulation. So very good for starts, also good for transplants. So something to consider. The second product might be something more useful to a hemp grower. It's called Microflora SA. And it is also a beneficial fungus, although we have it labeled as a plant growth promoter. Which actually makes things nice for growers like yourself. You don't necessarily have to log that using that because it's a plant growth promoter, not anything else. But if you're familiar with products like Serenade or Double Nickel, these are essentially the same strains of Bacillus, although these are combined at a higher rate. So you're basically getting more bang for your buck out of this product. Really quite effective for, as you can see, agriculture, greenhouses, nurseries, hydroponic systems, adult plants, cuttings, seedlings, and transplants. So very useful for you guys at all different stages of your grow, and definitely helps with both soil and foliar diseases that are common to hemp. So we can get into that more later. And the last of the pathogens that I wanted to discuss is something that I'm really, really excited about. This is a product that we've recently brought onto our portfolio, No Fly Wettable Powder, It is something that is recently been OMRI certified and EPA approved for outdoor use. I know for a fact in Oregon and Washington, we are labeled for cannabis, so we're good to go. In other states, it is labeled under tobacco, which will in many cases work because the state will recognize tobacco and hemp to be very similar, but you certainly can contact us if you're looking for more specifics about labeling and if you can use it where you're located. You can see the big number of pests that it likes to target, which is great. I am particularly interested in the top three, which are whitefly, aphis, and thrips. You can see below the keys for using it and how we basically would get this product to you. It's a 10-pound pail. Our outdoor generic rate is 8 ounces per acre. It mixes very easily, comparable to some of the other products out there. You might be familiar with a PFR 97. It has twice the spore count of PFR 97. It attacks all life stages of the pest, but I particularly like that it's really good against juvenile stages. It helps us to basically cater those programs I was mentioning earlier. And maybe most importantly, it's IPM friendly. I'll skip the best practices in lieu of time, but you'll have this available. It kind of gives you some good pointers for how to use. As far as scouting and monitoring, I can't emphasize enough how important this is for your success. If you've got IPM personnel on your farm, or if you've got just yourself as a grower available, these are some great things that you can be using to help your success. Sticky cards, sticky tape, Natutech Scout. So if you can see my cursor, I've included this picture here. And this is a new technology that Copert is going to be offering very soon. So that you can actually take a photograph with your smartphone of a sticky card, and it will give you counts and tell you what's on your card, which is fantastic. I can tell you from experience doing counts and trying to get positive ID on pests and beneficials is time consuming. So this is fantastic. I can't wait to use it myself. Regardless of Natutech, I'd move on to that hand lens. Critical. I kind of wanted to put this picture in here because there are different magnitudes that you can buy. I like to go with 20 times, but they go up beyond that, and some people like to use less. This is a great way for you to be able to identify what's going on in your crop. And along with that conversation, digital microscopes. When I first started, I didn't even know that digital microscopes existed. I know that now. Quite useful in sharing and basically helping us help you from a distance. They are great, and you can plug those into your smartphones or your laptops and get great photographs or videos of insects that are maybe plaguing your crop, and basically be able to record that and send it on to your colleagues or to us. Knowing and recognizing, we'll get into a moment, making detailed maps of your field and definitely monitoring charts is important just as much as having flagging material, often color-coded, so that you can discern if you've got hot spots in your crop, or if you have recently treated your crop in one area with a certain chemical, or you've done a recent release of beneficial insects in a certain area, so you know not to spray over that. All critical things. Definitely worth mentioning. This is something that is available to everybody here today. It is free. This is an app that you can download on your phone, on your smart tablet, on your laptop, whatever, what have you. It's called the Copert Side Effects Guide, and it is more or less intended for us to have more communication on chemical integration or compatibility, such a key element of IPM. This will basically tell you what will or will not work with the beneficial insects you are working with. So, a quick overview would be you're going to be working primarily with 3 screens. The first, you're going to be picking which beneficial organisms you're concerned about. The second, you're going to be picking which agent or chemical you can do by trade name or active ingredient that you're basically planning on using. And then finally, you can see what result that will have on the beneficial insects. The app itself will provide you with a ledger that will explain what these numbers mean. This is, for instance, is a reintroduction cycle, or when you reintroduce that same beneficial insect after applying that particular chemical, and it's done in weeks. So this one says 1 to 2 weeks, you're safe to reapply spinosad if you're using Swirsky. It also very nicely will have pollination. So we do offer a line of pollination, which probably won't be that critical for us. But if you are interested in making sure that you're not being harmful to bees and pollination in general, it'll give you some good information there as well. Definitely wanted to touch on application strategies. This is an important part of what Copert really focuses on and what we specialize in. And again, kind of filters into that whole concept that we like to hand tailor programs for you. Probably the most commonly used application method is what I'm circling here. It's called a mini airbug. It's a handheld blower that you can basically apply beneficial insects by walking through your crop. It really helps simplify and saves time, as well as ensures you're going to get the correct rate that you need for success. At the bottom here, you can see a little more sophisticated. We'll say this is a big step up from a mini airbug, and this is just an airbug. It's mechanized, so you don't actually have a human operating it. You computerize it and set it to release into your greenhouse. More often than not, we haven't yet mastered something like that for outdoor. And then finally, I wanted to take a moment to mention this. I apologize about the quality of the photo, but I feel like a broken record again, hammering the hand tailored. So this was a frame that we fabricated so that we can mount two blowers on to a back of a little ATV vehicle and basically ride up and down rows. So if you're working row crops or something like that, this would be interesting to talk about. Just again, to emphasize that, you know, Copert really has taken a lot of time and R&D, including these application strategies, to work with you and make using our products easy. We talked about additional resources earlier, and I definitely want to take a moment to mention our Knowing and Recognizing book. This is it. This is kind of a Bug Geek's Bible, and I can't emphasize enough how important and critical it is to be familiar with it. If you need to know about bugs, you can certainly jump onto our website and learn more about how to access and purchase it. You can see my footnotes there as to what makes this book so great. What I like to talk about is it's 443 pages, and in those pages are over 700 really high definition photographs of both pests and diseases, which is a whole new section that we just included in this new publication available to you guys. So it really helps educate from a distance and is something that you guys and gals should have in your library. Earlier, I didn't get that opportunity, unfortunately, to show you my video, which was really cool, but I will circle this. Again, this is my lack of PowerPoint. We'll just say, we'll leave it there. But this is a link to those videos. There's a page on YouTube that has Copert educational videos. There's dozens and dozens of them, from how-to best practice to histories. It's all there. Very worthwhile mentioning, and if you're interested in looking at videos and learning more about how our products work, I would recommend you take a look at that. And to wrap up, I'll just say the keys for success. This first one here, it probably can't be said enough. It seems simple, but it's critical, and that is the quality of the natural enemies you're using. Copert really takes great care in making sure that we have the highest quality and that we deliver to you that quality so that you have living creatures that you're releasing into your crop that will work for you. Best said, dead bugs won't work. So keep that in mind. Again, kind of hammering down on the research and development that Copert has done over the years. It's just phenomenal. I actually had a chance to go back to our corporate headquarters last fall and was simply blown away by the amount and just great people available to speak to in research and development. It's phenomenal. So trust that we definitely take great care in making sure we get you good information. Also important, worth mentioning, is open communication with the grower. What I mean by that is more or less making sure that you know, there's no gap in terms of you want to or you're concerned about using potentially a chemical without one of us, because you can greatly harm one of your programs that you've got in place by using something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you did on purpose. In most cases, it's done not knowing what you're doing. So again, earlier we talked about the side effects guide, or certainly contacting us directly is a great way to avoid that. Of course, us as experienced consultants with the knowledge of how these insects works. And finally, customer service or technical support is also critical. Interesting to say that our technical training that we do as consultants when new products are available, we actually include our customer service representatives in that training. So I always think that's remarkable. If you need to call in and you can't get a hold of one of us, you can likely get a good solid answer and support from one of our tech people through customer service. And at the bottom here, you can see this is a generic number for the United States, how to get a hold of one of those customer service
Greg,
reps.
do you mind if I pop in? We're about 5 minutes out from
Yeah,
time.
no, go ahead.
I just wanted to see if we could get to the couple questions that we had. Brandon is asking, is there a predatory mite for hemp russet mite? And if
Yes.
so, is there research to back that up?
Yes, research and development. Hammer down on that. Ultimately, russet mite, tomato russet mite is something that is probably Copert is most familiar with. We have worked a lot with russet mite in hemp, as well, more so in cannabis than hemp, but both crops. And I did actually have that on my slide, but I wanted to get through everything. Broad mite, area-fied mites, Swirsky mite and Californicus mite have proven to be the most effective. We've thrown both of those predatory mites at russet, depending on different scenarios. More often than not, humidity and temperatures will dictate which works better. But those two mites have thus far shown to have the best results against russet mite.
Okay, great. The second question I'm seeing is, are there any specific cannabis companion plants that you'd recommend for the northern Midwest states?
By companion plant, I'm assuming you're talking like a banker plants, plants that promote beneficials to be in your crop.
Well, let's roll with that because
we can't
talk too much. Let's roll with that one.
Yes, there are, and you definitely can reach out to us directly for a listing of those. It kind of depends on your climate. I know you mentioned that, I think you said the Northwest. I definitely have a list of those. I work a lot with hemp, not hemp. I work a lot with hops, both H's, and both actually related to one another. And it's kind of the same conversation as hops. So I certainly would be happy to get that information to you more detailed if you want to send me an email.
Okay, awesome. I think the last question that we can get to is, we're asked, we have the critical microorganisms strictly for vegetation stage and for flowering stage.
Can you repeat that?
It says, Sharice's asking, we have critical microorganisms that are strictly for vegetation stage and for flowering stage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There's that. Okay, well then I guess we have time for the second part of Brandon's question, which was, what parasites work best for cannabis aphid?
Yeah, so we are throwing the kitchen sink at cannabis aphid. Thus far, what is sticking is one of the predators or the parasitoids we mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, which is the Aphidius colmani. We are throwing a lot of colmani in conjunction with green lacewing larvae at the cannabis aphid and seeing great results. But I can tell you that our research and development comes back yet again, and we are doing quite a bit of research and development on this specific aphid, as we know it is a huge pest issue. And we have yet to publish anything detailed, and I'll just kind of as a caveat say that we take great care to make sure we don't jump to conclusions and give people bad advice. But hopefully soon we'll have something published or something more concrete. But as far as a loose answer, the combination of those two pests, or excuse me, beneficial insects, has worked quite well against that particular pest, and it's a big issue.
Okay, awesome. Sharif clarified the question a little bit. Which organisms are best for vegetation and best for flowering stage?
Well, you know, that kind of goes back to the sachet conversation piece that we touched on a little earlier. Vegetation, I definitely like to consider it to be more of a preventative state. Start clean, stay clean. So it's depending on the canopy of your plant and the situation, the specific situation of your grow. Swirsky mite is one of my favorite predatory mites in a preventative conversation piece or vegetative state. And then once you get on past that, closer to flowering, where you're a little more critical on timing, you get a little more aggressive with, depending on your pests, but more heavy rates, bulk releases instead of sachet releases, things of that nature.
Okay, awesome. Well, Greg, I just want to tell you, I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate everything you've had to educate us on around IPM for hemp. If anyone has questions for Greg, his presentation will be available afterwards. We're about to take a short break, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the next session that starts at 1:15 at Central Time for harvesting and drying. And I thank you, Greg, for your time.
Thank you for having me.